we are privileged to have with us Sachin Pilot, President, Rajasthan Pradesh Congress Committee, and the former Union Minister for Corporate Affairs with the Government of India. And also Mr. Venkatesan Ashok, the Consul General of India, San Francisco. I would now invite the panelists to come and take their seats, and Mr. Venkatesan Ashok to conduct the session.
It is always the toughest exercise to speak immediately after lunch. I see a lot of empty seats, which means people left. And those who are here may be too soporific to be too interested in what we say. But I am sure that at this session, with the person we have here, we will wake you up. Welcome to this session on inclusive innovation, creating technologies for popular growth. I think it's most fitting that we are discussing this topic, even if it's slightly off Silicon Valley, across the bay, but nevertheless in Silicon Valley, which is the hub of innovation. And we are here spurred on by the academic and intellectual stimulation of UC Berkeley and Stanford and other universities. The challenge we face in India is how to achieve swift, inclusive growth in a country with a very large population, having a bewildering spectrum of economic capabilities, literacy levels, and professional competencies. Mobile phones, TV, and the internet have led to a surge in aspirations amongst all the sections of society. We have 250,000 millionaires, but also 220 million people who live in abject poverty. To bridge this gap and to bring inclusive development, we need to identify technology solutions relevant to the needs of the people we address. Disruptive innovative solutions are required to effect change in a relatively short time scale. The JAM, which I spoke of earlier, Jan Adhan, Aadhaar, and mobile, on zero balance accounts. This system of combining your biometric identification with bank accounts and the mobile is helping in financial inclusion to millions of people in the rural areas, while also curbing corruption and enabling transparency in land records and property records, as well as personal information like passports and school leaving certificates. Online education systems with tablets can be a game changer. E-health systems, some of which I have already seen are functioning in India, operating with ASHAs, the social health workers, can transform rural health systems. Smart villages need frugal, innovative solutions for provision of water, electricity, education, health, sanitation, mobile banking, crop insurance, fertilizer, successful agricultural production and irrigation techniques, efficient storage systems, and gainful employment. All these are needed. Since we are talking about 700 million people requiring these solutions in areas which they may have very low infrastructure support in, we have to think in terms of simplicity, affordability, scalability, which are the key requirements to ensure inclusive development and growth. For the urban and semi-urban population, smart city innovations, including affordable housing, electricity with a renewable energy mix, smart metering and grids, good public transportation, efficient water supply and sanitation, green buildings, schools, parks, shopping and entertainment areas are all important areas for innovations. We need to take lessons in and from cities and communities across the world to adopt the best practices for implementation in India. To discuss this further, today I am delighted to introduce to you the guest we have, the guest of honor we have here for this afternoon session. Mr. Sachin Pilot was born in September 1977. He is currently the president of the Rajasthan Pradesh Congress Committee. He was formerly Union Minister for Corporate Affairs and a member of parliament in the 15th Lok Sabha from Ajmer. He has a distinguished lineage. His father was a union minister and Congress leader, and he has done his bachelor's from St. Stephen's College and MBA from Wharton. He was with the BBC and General Motors, and he was the youngest MP in India at the age of 26 years. He's also the first union minister to be commissioned as an officer in the Territorial Army. So, and he is a qualified pilot. So, I think with all this excitement here, I would be very happy to move on to ask a few questions. Would you like me to do it here? Okay. Okay. Then I will give to you. Welcome to California. You come from a state that has a desert. California also has a desert. Rajasthan is primarily agricultural and pastoral, and we see a lot of takeaways and innovations in terms of water management, energy, agriculture, IT services, technology from California, which could be of great relevance to Rajasthan. We see Rajasthan also as a leader in renewable energy and solar energy. So before I fire all these at you, would you like to make a general comment, and then after that I can lead on to these issues?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going
Yeah.
to speak from there. Is that okay? Sana, finally. First of all, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. And I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank AIMA and the Haas Business School for hosting this event and for having invited me here this afternoon. Now, we've heard many speakers since the morning, and we heard Mr. Petroda speak just before lunch. A lot of the things that I thought I would want to say have been said by Sam, but I will certainly be far less candid than he is, because I'm trained as a politician. So I'm not going to be as straightforward and as candid as he has been. But I will certainly try and do my best to put across some of the points that I think are quite pertinent and relevant to our discussions this afternoon. We spoke a lot about technology. We heard from 4G, 5G, IoT, the whole ecosystem of IT technologies, mobile telephony, teledensity, so on and so forth. I've had the great opportunity to serve my country as a minister in the Ministry of Information Technology and Telecommunication. I spent about 3.5 years there. And one of the things I thought I'd learned in my time in government was that politicians and policymakers must not feel that they are the repository of all wisdom. What happens is when you become a minister of a department, you certainly feel that you know everything about everything. The fact that the Indian IT sector, the Indian telecom sector has done exceptionally well. Make no mistake, 20 years ago, none of you in this room would have thought of India as a telecom pioneer or an innovative hub for creating new technologies. The things that we have to do is let minds and young people take on innovative challenges, let their creativity dictate the way technology will go. And most importantly for governments, I think, is to get out of the way. We have been able to do that successfully. And before I go any further, I think it's important also for me to say that irrespective of which shade of government there is in New Delhi, and irrespective of who is in the White House here in the US, our two countries' bilateral relationships have been forged by decades of interaction, business, and cooperation from people from across the field. And that transcends the political engagement. Therefore, it's important to understand whether it's the BJP or the Congress, the Democrats or the Republicans, our bilateral relationship, I think, has reached a point where the people-to-people cooperation and getting together is far ahead of track one of what we do officially as governments. I belong to the Congress party, and we are the principal opposition party. We were in government exactly 2 years ago. We had 10 years in the government. Mr. Petroda also worked in the government with us. And I think it's fair to say that in the last 6 decades, what India has achieved as a nation state is perhaps unmatched. And I say this because not of the GDP numbers, of the growth rate, of our foreign reserves, etc. I say this because of the complexities that India grapples with on everyday basis. Now, we take this as granted, but in India, there are 27 official languages. And I'll come to the point about how technology is more relevant to people who are able to access this. So our diversity, our complexities, our small issues that take on many facets of our lives, to deal with that successfully, to still have amongst even the BRICS countries, we know what's happening in Brazil and China. I won't speak about Russia. What's happening in India is that we are still growing at a healthy growth rate. Now, there's always a confusion about numbers, whether it's 5 or 6 or 7, irrespective. Our growth rate is positive. Our fundamentals are strong. Our economic indicators look northwards. And that is because of the collaborative effort of everybody, including the farming communities, our tech companies, our policymakers, our bankers. We have all worked together to create an India today, which is far more aspirational. What innovation needs to do, what technologies need to do, must be dictated by the needs of our people. I think Sam made the point about technology companies working for rich entities or for richer people. That perhaps is true superficially. But what matters to me most as a policymaker or someone who is involved in making of policy is how is technology or how is innovation or how is this creativity improving the lives of people, not just earning money. So earning money is one part of the problem. And I think we all need to make sure that collectively India is out of the debt trap and the farmers and so on and so forth. But is the life of an individual better off because of innovation and technology? And I'll give you 2 examples on what I thought was important when I was in government. We had this optical fiber laid out to 250,000 villages, which is the largest program after Australia, which has a broadband to the home program, the Indian program. And I think before we demitted office, about 60% of the work was done. Now, you have these pipes, but what's lacking is really local content development. You have these apps that are being developed here in the Bay Area or somewhere else in Europe or America, but how pertinent and how relevant they are to the common folk in India who don't speak English, who don't even speak Hindi, for example. So we really focused our minds on getting the local content, local languages to take on a life of themselves. Domain name registration. We had to fight with ICANN to get the Indian languages recognition. If a Indonesian language is recognized, Malay is recognized, but a lot of the Indian languages were not recognized. And because there was lack of content on the net, people were not developing applications that you could be using. How is a person living in rural Karnataka who speaks only Kannada? How is he or she going to access technology that is English? It has no relevance to him. So local content development, I think, was very important, and we've been quite successful, at least in some regard, to be able to get that and started. I won't speak for very long, but I do want to make a point about internet connectivity, mobile telephony, and teledensity. Phone and smartphones. I mean, what is smart today becomes unsmart in a quarter. Phones are changing the lives of everybody. And I think mobile phones have done more to revolutionize life in India than perhaps even internet. The fact that a lot of people in India don't have good education, don't have access to good quality education, the mobile phone has become a game changer because I think it has truly democratized our society. We have so many fault lines, religion, caste, ethnicity, language. But when you're on a social media platform or when you're having a digital identity, you're basically in a binary, you're a 0-1. Everybody's the same. Everybody has equal rights, equal access. And you're able to come on the platform, seek what you want, learn what you want, say what you want. And that has really given tremendous potential and power to people who have so far through the centuries been disenfranchised from the mainstream. So growth is happening. We've had n number of innovations, frugal innovations. We have so many small pilot projects about telemedicine and e-education. We've heard n number of examples. When I was in government, every week we'd have some presentation by a group of people who developed a new technology. But it hasn't taken off. Unless we reach the critical mass of reaching, 50 million people, 100 million people, it will have no impact. Because if you keep developing technologies that are only going to be as a pilot project or one village or 5 villages, I don't think it's going to have that paradigm change. Dr. Darwin is doing some work on smart villages. I've heard about smart cities. It all has to fall in together. It all has to fall into place. And if you're able to do that, believe me, the face of India is going to change. 15 million new jobs every year. The median age in India is 26. These people need to be retooled, reskilled, and we need to shift at least 250 million people from the farmlands into the shop floor, into factories, into manufacturing. We keep talking about service industry, IT industry. I think we have to remember that no country the size of India has gone through and become a developed country without having gone through the cycle of manufacturing. We've got to also focus on manufacturing. But we have, I think, enough talent and resource available in India. And I'm sure our friends here in the West Coast are going to be more than happy to collaborate on that front where we're able to give the kind of skill sets that today young Indians need. And what is the difference between a young Indian today who's 25 years old and somebody who was 25 years old when Sam was a much younger man, let's say 20 years ago? Yeah, you're a young man. So the difference is that 25 years ago, the same IIT graduate, same lawyer, doctor, engineer, had the same gray cells. He or she could make the same products and be as smart as he or she is today. But 25 years ago, that person coming off from India did not have the confidence and the assertive powers that they have today. So today, a young person studying in India who has not traveled abroad has the self-confidence of making a PowerPoint presentation in front of 100 people. But 25 years ago, they were good in doing data processing and writing down notes and doing scientific research, etc., but not able to extrapolate or not able to give that kind of overall personality that they have today. So that confidence comes because something is going right in that part of the world. People have faith in the future of our country. People have faith in which direction we are headed. And at the risk of sounding immodest, I think some part of that credit has to be shared with politicians who I'm sure all of you don't like as much as I would have liked to like. But politics is a very strange phenomenon. I've been hearing since I've been here for the last 2 days about what's happening in the US, the Republican nominee and the Democrat nominee, and the amount of people who go out and vote. Don't forget in India, for example, the voting percentage is 75%, 80%. That means people feel involved in the electoral process. And that is a very, very heartening fact to remember, that people have faith in the future of our nation, what's happening in India. Technology, I think, has no limits. It will carry on, it will invent, and it will deliver to the best of its capacities. Technology does not discriminate, but applications do. And that's where I think policymakers, corporate leaders, business leaders, and people who have a semblance of having a incremental growth with a trickle-down effect. I think all those stakeholders have to come together to be able to deliver next 50 years, which are far more level playing field available to all of us to deal with. I won't go on for very long. I'll stop now, but I just want to make last point about what's happening in this part, the western part. I'm coming to the West Coast after about 15, 20 years. I haven't been here for a long time. And the way I see that America has remained a very important export destination for IT services. So 2/3 of our IT exports land up in the US. There is a lot of discussion about how we must diversify the basket of our export portfolio, which is happening. But because of the strong relationships that we've had here in the western coast of the US and India, this relationship is going to get stronger and stronger. But it does not mean that the services that we provide are not going to get commoditized. The cost differential will decrease slowly. So therefore, Indian innovators, people who focus on India, people who have interest in India and Indian companies have to re-innovate. You've got to be ahead of the curve to make sure that we are providing niche services so that this relationship remains strong and gets stronger as time goes by. I'll stop at that, but I'm happy to answer your questions, Mr. Ashok, as they come.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very inspiring message. You have studied in America, and in Silicon Valley, but also in other parts of America. There's a great deal of the innovative spirit, the capacity for innovation, free thinking, thinking out of the box, and so on. This is something which I think we need to be able to translate back into India. At the same time, as you mentioned, it's a different India today. So you have the innovators in India also, including the most magnificent jugaad innovators who are able to innovate with very little, frugal and beyond frugal. So how do you see the possibility of using what we have here to be able to synergize with what we have there for best effect?
I think markets determine what technologies actually get accepted. There could be a government policy to push a certain technology. There could be a lot of vested interest in pushing a certain innovation. But until there is enough traction within the market, it won't take off. It has to be matching with the needs and perhaps even expectations of India. You talked about the Indian jugaad and our reverse engineering expertise that we have sometimes. But all of those things are practical. You can safeguard that, you can have all the good intentions, but unless we are able to create a very honest ecosystem about doing these things, it's no point in just giving rhetorical speeches. I think there's a lot of technology, a lot of development that's happening here in the US that perhaps does not have the market. But in India, we have all types of markets. We have people who are dying for the iPhone 7 to come out, and then we have people who have never seen a mobile phone, who have no concept of technology. So anything that gets developed, I think India is a perfect place because of the size, scale, scope, and depth of the market, that you can really penetrate each segment. India is the only country in the world where we have about 8 to 10 mobile operators in each city. Globally, it's 3 or 4 at the most. So because every mobile operator has about 80 million users, it's still a viable concept. So in India, I think it's tremendous. The amount and the segmentation of market is so strong and so viable that most technologies which are practical can be put to use back in India.
Thank you. I could go on and on, but I think it's better if I can open this out to the audience. Are there any questions which you'd like to put to Mr. Pilot?
Let me ask one question, Ashok. You represent the younger generation. When I go to India, there's a lot of talent. I do all these innovation challenges in India. The response is just overwhelming. There's a lot of vibrant young people. It's so much talent. We are a nation of graduates. There are more students in India than in any other part of the world. I think 66% of our population is very young. But we also represent the largest unemployed people in the world among the young people. And I know you connect with them, with your generation. What are some of the inclusive innovations that could take place, as well as the technologies that are emerging? How would you include them in the process? And because I feel very disheartened when I go, I just wrote one email, and we had 500 students participate in the Smart Village Challenge. Amazing response. And there's a lot, and many of those ideas are great. I got kids from IIT Madras and IIT Delhi making a trip all the way to this little village in Mori, and to come to participate in this with their own money, and with such talent and great ideas. And how do we engage these folks and direct and channel that energy? And if you were the president, what would you do?
I think the fundamental problem in the education system in India is that there is a huge shortfall of skilled, qualified people. But the courses that the universities and colleges teach, it has no bearing on what the industry wants. Now, when you have engineering colleges giving out degrees, most companies, when they hire these engineers, they are compulsorily made to go under a 6-month training program. and then they actually get to work in the offices. So there is no connectivity between what the industry is wanting the workforce to deliver and the courses that we are teaching in our universities and colleges. That's a huge problem. One of the things I think we should do, and when I say we should, is in a few years' time, because don't forget, Dr. Darwin, today's opposition is tomorrow's government. So at some point, we are going to come back into government. The professors and the lectures that are going on in IITs and the top colleges, etc., they're now being made available because of technology, and you can access them. But what we've been able to do, unfortunately, is to create very good high-end institutions, IITs, IIMs, very good MBA programs, good PhD programs. But we've not really been able to focus on the primary education. So what happens is that the primary school, middle school, high school education is still lacking, and lacking by a fair amount. But our top institutions are amongst the best in the world. So very few people get the privilege to go and attend these schools and colleges. And once you get into IIT, you're smart enough to really get the best jobs that are going around. But what happens to the majority, or 80% of kids who don't have access to private school and university and colleges, those are the ones who need skills and who need to become good plumbers and mechanics and do things with their hands. Because you don't want 500 million young Indians who have got degrees in philosophy and history and literature and become unemployable in the end. You want to be able to give them diplomas where you do skill training and you retool them so that they are able to compete globally. Because tomorrow's challenge is not about getting a job in Mumbai or Pune or Hyderabad. Tomorrow's challenge is that you're going to be competing with guys from the Bay Area. You're going to be competing with guys from London and Brussels. How do you take on those challenges? And you can have the basic education, but unless you're able to give them cutting-edge skill development and those kind of skill sets, they won't be able to compete in the global marketplace. And today, increasingly, as we know, the whole planet has become one big, large marketplace for employers and for job aspirants. So it's a huge challenge. I think what's one of the biggest challenges for us is to be able to understand what young Indians actually need. We always tell them that you need to do this, but it's really something when we're able to hear them, and that's what policymakers should do. If you're able to impart good quality education, I see no reason why this large number of young people in India will become an asset in the time to come.
I think
I have a question which is related to the government policy. Since you have been involved with the government, maybe you can tell me why it has happened. I come from a telecom background, but involved in agriculture for the last 10 years. My question is lack of government policy, connectivity, and infrastructure has led to pretty close to centralized IT services, which means Wipro, TCS, Infosys, they are all based in close proximity, which has led to ghost towns in Indian rural areas as well as Tier B and Tier C cities, which means the people or the youth which is there is unemployable. There's no jobs for them. What should be the government policy in terms of moving or asking these companies to set up center outside Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Pune?
I mean, with the same logic, lots of companies are in the Bay Area. Why are they not putting up IT companies in Las Vegas? I think it's a factor of geography, it's a factor of circumstances. But just to make a short point, for 55 years, the Indian governments were always blamed for having second-grade infrastructure, roads, airports, railway line, highways, etc. We never had world-class infrastructure. So 10 years ago, we decided as government that we've missed the boat in creating, hard physical infrastructure. But what we can do is leapfrog and create a technological infrastructure that will be second to none. That's why this optical fiber program, broadband to the villages, was started 7 years ago. And I'm happy to report that today, I think India will have one of the most outstanding IT infrastructures that any country of our size is ever going to have. That's because we've been laying out those optical fiber cables. The pipes are ready. The last mile will be, of course, wireless. But that was a thinking that happened 7, 8 years ago. And you'll see the fruits of that in the next 2 or 3 years. As to your question about should the government interfere and say that you should set up a factory here or headquarters there, I don't think it's the job of the government to really dictate where they should come up. Government should incentivize. I think the government's job is to handhold, encourage, incentivize, and not interfere. If you give enough incentive for companies to set up shops in Patna, in Jabalpur, in Gwalior, why will they not put it? So state governments also now compete with each other. Why does Delaware have zero tax? And every company is registered in Delaware, in the United States, because it's an incentive. So if the states are going to be competing to provide more incentives, I'm sure you'll have much more of a geographical spread as to the locations of these companies. But I don't think it's the government's job to tell Wipro to go and set up shop in Calcutta and not Bangalore. I think the state governments have a lot of role to play, not the central government. Even though I'd love to blame the central government for everything right now. But I'm being quite honest, I think that's not the truth.
Okay, please.
My name is Surya. My name is Surya. I'm a surface transportation focused startup. And I was recently in India last month, actually. And I was basically traveling from Vizag to Bangalore. You know, flight took 1.5 hours, while train takes about 18 hours, which is, you know, there's a lot of disparity between the surface transport versus train transport. And I read all
I think we
about
do that because you can get to enjoy the scenery and the greenery when you move along slowly. So what's the rush?
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, but I mean, I did read about the evolution of the bullet train and how the Japanese have done that, like Shinkansen and Hideyoshima and Shinji Shogo and all that.
Please ask
but
the question.
How come we cannot do that in India? Like, why we can't transform some of the surface transportation to be competitive globally, like with existing things, with technology being developed from India, like that's my interest. Like,
It's an existential question as to why we could not make bullet trains 20 years ago. The fact is, to be very honest with you, we've had bigger fires to fight. We have the world's largest rail network, and we transport more people than you can even count. So it's a huge effort to transport people on a daily basis, and we have so many demands, and population stress is so much that you have multiple stops. The railway lines aren't clear for high-speed travel. We have lots of hindrances. So I'm not here defending why we don't have bullet trains. I think we will in the time to come. But perhaps it wasn't the best thing for us to put so much time, effort, and money in making one bullet train as opposed to doing N number of other things with the same resources. There is a resource constraint, and I think we have to manage with what we have.
The question is, like, bullet train was developed for Japan's problems, but the question is, like, we can develop technology to solve our problems, like for surface transportation. That's the whole point.
Point taken.
Sachin, I have a question here. I'm a scientist from Berkeley, and I'm trying to work with India because I have a startup company. Like Sam was lucky enough to work with Rajiv Gandhi and the likes of others. Can you create a channel like that to work with young guns like you, so we can actually work with politicians who actually have a real time?
I'm not really employed right now, but
Hey,
in the government,
today's opposition, tomorrow's ruling.
in the government, that is, in the government, yeah. I think there are lots of people, by the way, when I was working in the ministry, we had lots of people who were interning with us. And I used to encourage that. People from the United States, even from India, young, boys and girls. Young means younger than me, I'm saying, relatively young. And they spend a few weeks traveling around, and it's good. We always open it up, but I don't know if every politician or every minister is open to the idea of having, someone come and work in the offices. It's not a structured program like I know in the US, the senators and congressmen have their intern program. Ours is not so institutionalized. But still, I think there's lots of opportunities for people to come and experience and expose themselves, because someone said earlier on today that it's all very well to sit here and just look on the screen as to what's happening in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu or Punjab and Bihar. It's a whole different ballgame when you're actually there to understand the real nuances of why some things such as a bullet train can't be implemented. It's difficult to come and explain to you why, but once you experience the real thing in India, it gives you much better understanding. And I encourage some of you who get the chance to go and work there for a few weeks, a few months. It'll give you a flavor of a lifetime. And then there's something about India that you can't encapsulate in a speech or a presentation. You can only get that once you go there and you see. And if you're lucky enough to become a part of the change that's happening, now's the best time. I think my generation of politicians will be remembered for the kind of economic opportunity we did not open for them. In the 70s, 80s, all about social equity, fighting with justice and equality, so on and so forth. Economy reformed 25 years ago. So today, the young Indians are not really looking for, the power to vote or the constitution, what it says. They want job opportunities. They want, a better life than their parents and grandparents. So how much of the unlocked potential we are able to open for them, that economic opportunity, that's how I think people are judging the politicians of my generation. And we all work together. Look, I belong to one political party. The current government is the BJP government. We have our differences. I'm in foreign soil. I think whatever the government of India does today to support America and companies here to work in India, I will support that. We have our differences, but I think parties are above individuals, but the nation is much beyond any party. Parties come and go. At the same time, it's also my job to make the government accountable. In a healthy democracy, a viable opposition is almost as important as the government. So to put them on the mat, to ask the right questions, to make them accountable and answerable, that's part of my job. It's my political responsibility. But we must understand that our common objective is to make sure that India rises to the top. And whatever may be the challenges ahead of us politically, the nation is supreme, so we all have to work together to achieve that dream.
Can you hear me? Yeah. There has been talk earlier today about how do we get young kids employed and what's the right kind of education and how our education may be lacking. And my name is Satnam Gambhir, and I run a software company, FinTech, here in Southern California. We have offices in Bangalore. And in listening and in thinking through, and Vishal talked earlier, he's from Infosys, I'm thinking that it's really, I think if India has been, like with the whole IT, you have all these colleges that, all these grads coming out, and when they come out, they are not really prepared to deliver work that can earn money. And I think you mentioned earlier, they have to go through 6 months of training to really get to the point where they can be ready to be delivering. I was thinking as I was listening that there is no harm in that. I think if we can, in India, have a system where we can bring out well-rounded, educated kids, because what skills are needed today in 5 years will be different skills. But if we can have education systems that gets them open-minded, thinking, and ready to take on any challenges, then the next entrepreneur, you'll have manufacturing, and and you could bring out grads and train them in manufacturing, and they could.
So I take your point. The reason I made that point was because I think there are 500,000 engineering graduates every year that India produces. And NASSCOM did a study that only 25% of them are actually able to do the work that they're trained for. So the training is not as an additionality. It is basically filling up the gap of the quality that the engineers have been given. So I take your point that we have to continuously retrain young minds and people, but I think the engineering colleges have to do it. Shouldn't get away by doing substandard job, right? So they have to make sure that the quality of engineers is as good as it should be, and not for the company who hires them to then further train them just to be able to be regular engineers. That is the point I was trying to make.
Ms. Reddy?
Mr. Pilot, this is, everyone's instigated me to ask you this question. You went to Wharton, you worked for a multinational, and then you've come, you've entered politics. What inspired you to enter politics? And then there's another question, is 10 years from today, we strongly think you will be the Prime Minister of India. So what are your 3 priorities going to be?
Ma'am, two things I'll say to you.
This is a joint question.
2 things I'll say to you.
It was just
One, politicians actually sometimes fall victims to their own propaganda.
Okay.
Yes, and politicians usually have a very high valuation of self-worth. And I am not a victim of either of those two.
Okay.
I have a very clear idea as to what I can and cannot do. I'll come back to your first question. You're right, I did go to Wharton, and it was because I wanted to go to business school. I did my undergraduate in literature, so I learned Shakespeare and poetry and all that, and I thought enough, I need to get something that's going to help me in the workplace. So I did work really hard to get into that business school. which is, by the way, almost as good as this one. I'm not saying this is bad or good. So,
Politically right.
so I went there and, sometimes destiny makes decisions for you without asking. Now, as you know, my father was in politics. He was a Air Force pilot. That's why I have this name, pilot. He died at 53, and most people say it's dynasty politics, father, son, the entire country is run by families, etc. I mean, I never had a discussion longer than 30 seconds about if I would ever to join politics. I was 21 years old. But I also realized that after coming back from the US, I worked for a few years and did many things in 3 years, 4 years. But I realized that I have had the good fortune to be exposed to so much of politics, from morning to night in my drawing room, in my family life, and I had learned, seen, and experienced a lot. And combine that with the education I'd got, I thought it'll be a good platform for me to do stuff which is, better than making PowerPoint presentations. I did enough of that. I don't think I was making any difference at all. I was working in a company. I ran a small business. I worked for the BBC for a short while. But I thought I could really do something, and it's something that I wanted to do. It wasn't an emotional reaction. I wasn't pushed to it. Some people feel that there was a lot of pressure from people, and you get emotionally inclined. It wasn't. It was very well thought out. 4 years of thinking, and when I turned 25, you have to be at least 25 to run for elections in India. I turned 25 and I said to myself, I'm going to try and do this. And by then, usually politicians have their fathers and grandfathers in positions of power to handhold them to the safe zone. My father died 4 years before I even entered Parliament. I ran for elections, and it's been a good experience. Is it all fun and dance and roses and walk in the park? No. Do I get reasonably dejected sometimes? Yes. Is it frustrating? Certainly. Is it satisfying? Most certainly. And yeah, maybe I could have got a different job and made more money working in this country or anywhere else in the world. But I really enjoy the small satisfaction I get, not every day, but I get it routinely. And that gives me enough nourishment to keep going. And I don't want to be flaky in saying, I'm going to make the world a better place and world peace and the universe is great and etc. That's not how it is. The fact of the matter is that it's a very tough job. And Indian politics is competitive, it's ruthless. Politics in the US is, it's like snatching candy from a baby. There's nothing in this country. I mean, if you want to do politics, you have to see an electoral politics. What electoral politics is. So 2.5 million people elect one person. And in my constituency previously that I represented, I had 1,538 villages, 1,538 villages. And I went to almost all of them, at least thrice in the 5 years that I was serving them as Member of Parliament. It takes a great amount of effort. It takes a lot more than people think it takes, but it's a good feeling to be able to be able to influence changes. And when you get a chance to work in the government, you can do a lot more. So it sounds cliched, but to be able to serve, a big, large, proud country, to be recognized as somebody who's contributed, let's say, even 0.01% into the greater good, it's a good feeling. Yes, you can run a business, you can work in a nice company, you can have a cushy lifestyle. I'm not saying that I'm hard up on anything, but the choice that you make, it's not a profession, it's a lifestyle. It's like a doctor on call 7 days a week. You're basically working in the emergency ward and you're on call 24/7. And the kind of demands that are put on Indian politicians, I don't think any other part of the world even comes close to comparing with it. But I'm quite happy in what I'm doing. I've been in government, I've been a member of parliament for 10 years, now I'm running my party in the state. In 2 years' time, we have elections in Rajasthan, and I can tell all of you that there will be a change of government. 2018 will see Congress government in Rajasthan. And even when you do politics, I have political adversaries. So I still believe you can oppose policy, governments, governance styles. You can oppose programs. You can have and when I oppose a certain policy of the government of the day, I always try and give an alternative plan. I say, here's plan B because I think this is better than that. So criticizing for the sake of criticism, I don't think it's appreciated by most people anyway. So you give an alternative governance structure. If you do that, people accept your reasonings and your thought processes, and then you get elected. And that's what my task today is to revive my party in Rajasthan state, and that's what I'm doing. And 2018, Ms. Reddy, I shall welcome you in Jaipur with the Congress government.
Thank you very much. I'm being given signals that we must wind up. I don't think there are any more questions. Are there any more questions? One last question. One.
Mr. Sachin, you said that you're unemployed as of now. I was a little shocked because what I understood from our politics that whether you win or lose, you need to work in your constituency or you do round the clock 24/7. So kind of it intrigued me that I ask you again that what do you do when you're unemployed? Because if I see Professor Dr. Solomon, even when he, in no capacity as a politician, he's galvanizing his village, his hometown, and he's taking all the companies without any power to support him. So in that respect, even when you're not winning the election, what is your normal?
Well, I'll tell you, when I said unemployed, I meant that I'm not taking salary from the government, right? To be honest with you, I'm far more busy and I'm working doubly hard. I am being in opposition than I did when I was in government. Because in government, you have a lot of resources, you have a lot of things that take care of themselves. But in the opposition, I am the president of my party in Rajasthan, 70 million people, 39 districts. I'm running the party, I'm rebuilding the organization, I'm meeting the cadres, I'm traveling all over the place, and we lost very badly. And after that, I was asked to go and head the party, so I had to start from scratch, to be honest with you. So the work is tremendous. It's been 2.5 years. We won many of these local elections, municipal elections, village elections. We won some by-elections. So we've had some successes, and I think at least some part of it, if I can take the credit, I'll be happy to do. But what keeps us motivated now is to make sure that we are there with the people. Now, I oppose the government, not because I dislike anybody in the government, because I feel that their policies on road transportation, on law and order, on child welfare, on school and education is flawed. But I have a better alternative and a better plan to offer to the people, and that's what I'm busy doing. When I oppose the chief minister of my state, I don't make personal allegations. I don't use language that is unbecoming of an Indian politician. I treat her with regard and respect, but yet I firmly oppose the things that she does as a chief minister, not as an individual, but as someone who's been elected to do a job which I think is not up to the mark. And that's what healthy democracy is about. And I think we must learn to respect our adversaries. We are political opponents. We're not enemies. And I think that's the sense most Indians should take away, that just because you belong to different parties doesn't mean you have to stab each other to death. You know, you can have a healthy conversation, even a heated conversation, but the fact that you agree to disagree marks really the essence of our democracy. It happened in the 50s. Pandit Nehru had people from the Communist Party in his cabinet. He didn't need to, just to show the sense of solidarity, because for the world outside, India must be seen and to be shown as one strong entity. We have our own fissures and fault lines. It doesn't mean that everybody has to see, you know, the ugliness that happens in our political corridors. It happens in every country. But I think a mature politician, a mature political party will always treat with a large heart. And I've always learned one thing. If you don't have a large heart, if you can't think big, you'll never get big.
Well, thank you very much. And I will now hand over to